the leading election lawyer in the city of Chicago, the state of Illinois, the continent of North America, and all 7 continents in the universe, not to mention this entire solar system, perhaps this galaxy, and the universe beyond. We're talking about, and there's nobody there at the switcher to handle this, so I'm kind of dragging this out, guys. We're talking about the one, the only, James P. Nally. Hit the switch, Sonny! Jim, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Avi, and thanks again. I really enjoy getting together every election season with you to host this program.
First of all, thank you very much. And for those of you who are just tuning in now, this was originally aired. This is right now a live show. It'll be re-aired this coming Tuesday, if you tuned in late, at 8 p.m. on Channel 21, CanTV 21. This will also wind up being 2 separate half-hour shows. The first half hour, this will all be available on Sonny's channel on YouTube, www.ntnm.org. In my spare time, I publish Jewish Chicago, which is w.aviworld.com. Thank you so much for the wonderful response, record distribution. Anybody with the problem? Well, actually, thank you so much for the wonderful response. Everything in this paper is true and documentable and eyewitnessable and all the rest of it. So if you don't like the content, you may not be totally in agreement with some of the actions of the candidates, but those are true actions. But anyway, you know what? We just concentrated on the aldermanic race. I think we ought to talk about mayor.
Yeah, well, mayor, they're actually, the mayor's race is obviously the marquee race, and this time, for the first time in 20 years, it's actually a wide open race. There are a couple other offices. The city clerk's office is open because Miguel Devalle is the current clerk who's running for mayor. And there are 2 people running for that office, Susan Mendoza and Patricia Horton. And then the city treasurer's race.
By the way, I'll just point out, too, I really like Art Andros a lot, but he didn't quite make the ballot, despite the fact that he had a great election lawyer. He needed more signatures.
Yeah, well, Art, I know.
Oh, and I want to thank Zara Quadri for all the effort she put in, too, for Art.
Yeah, well, Art's just a quality guy, and I know Art's going to be back because he has a real interest in public service. Stephanie Neely is running unopposed for the city treasurer. I had something to do with that. So.
Oh, very nice.
So, yeah, but the mayor's race is obviously the big one. It's the one everybody's been talking about since Mayor Daley announced he was not seeking re-election. So it seems that the big question now, according to what all the polling and newspapers and media outlets are saying, is whether Rahm Emanuel will have enough votes to avoid a runoff from the February 22nd election. And that probably comes down to what it always comes down to in elections: turnout. Who turns out in what areas and what numbers.
Yeah, me personally, you know, I actually didn't endorse anybody in Jewish Chicago this time.
Right.
You know, I gave indications, but I didn't want to endorse anybody. I personally see Rahm as a continuation of the present administration with some twists. It's almost like, you know, like a football trade or a baseball trade. You know, we sent Bill Daley over to Washington, you know, in return for Rahm Emanuel and maybe a second-round draft choice.
Well, I think, you know, it's coming down to, it seems like most of the labor endorsements have been going to Gary Chico. Of course, Carol Mosley Braun has a lot of support in the black community and other areas along the lakefront, too. Miguel Devalle has been generally very well respected by people from all over the city of Chicago. So all these candidates are bringing something to the table. And again, I think it comes down to turnout. And I think it might be fun to talk about a few of these other aldermanic races because
absolutely.
That's what's going to drive turnout, I think. I think that there will be a heavier than normal turnout this election cycle because in so many wards, incumbent aldermen have either decided to retire or they are being vigorously opposed by challengers. And there's a few wards on the north side that would probably be fun to talk about besides
Sure.
the 50th. There's the 47th Ward, Alderman Schulter, Eugene Schulter, who was alderman there, has been alderman since I believe 1975, has decided to retire. And there are four candidates, I should say, running to replace him. Tom O'Donnell's, I think, the favorite in that race. Tom is a longtime aide to Sheriff Dart, has worked for the city of Chicago, has a real good grasp of issues. has been president of the Ravenswood Community Council, and he's running with the blessing of Alderman Schulter to replace him.
And I will say, having driven through there, because I'm actually one of the 2 delivery boys for Jewish Chicago, it's a glamorous work, you know, you're publisher or delivery boy. It's fun, because that way I get to be hands-on. I saw more signs for him than any other candidate, but signs don't vote.
Right. But I think it comes down to it in a lot of these races. If people have ties to that community and they've established a record there as a member of the community and being active in affairs, and I think Tom has done that. Another interesting race in the area is the 48th Ward. Again, a long-term Alderman, Mary Ann Smith, has decided to retire, and I believe there's 6 people running there. And I think, again, the favored candidate is Harry Osterman, who's currently serving that area as the state representative.
Whose mother is a beach. I mean, beach
well, his mom was alderman many years ago before she passed away, and also, there's a beach named after her down right at the turn there at Hollywood. Yeah. But Harry is another person who, you know, in Springfield has had a very good record in terms of building coalitions. That's a very diverse area, as most of the lakefront is, and you know, Harry is building on those skills, I think, that he acquired in Springfield to bring people together. So that's another race will be interesting, because if you look at a lot of these races, Avi, when you have the numbers of people who are running, where you have 4, 5, 6 people running.
Actually, there's even 11s and 18s.
Yes. When you have that number and you do the math, and as you know, in the nonpartisan system of election that the city of Chicago has, in order to win the first round, you have to get 50% of the vote plus 1. And that can be difficult when you have multiple candidates. Even if somebody gets 3 or 4% of the vote, that could be enough to deny somebody who, say, gets 48 or 49% of the vote that additional handful of votes that they need.
All it takes is that little bit. We should point out that early vote, you can still early vote till Thursday, is it?
Yes. There's still early voting till the Thursday, which would be the 17th, I believe. And then there's still in-person absentee voting, where you can go down to the Board of Elections and vote an absentee ballot, I believe, until the 19th. So there's still plenty of time, and you can still actually, by mail, request an absentee ballot even now. Today's the 12th or 13th of February. The rule on absentee ballots is you can make that request, and as long as your ballot is postmarked by February 22nd, the election day, it will be counted even if the post office delivers it after that. There's a 2-week grace period, to allow the mail to catch up. So if you've got an absentee ballot or you want to order one this coming week, you can do it. I know the board is very efficient on this, particularly in the last week, and they will send those ballots out immediately, and you can go ahead and vote it, and as long as you get a postmark on it going back to the board as of election day, even if it arrives 2 or 3 or 4 days later, it will be counted.
A couple things I want to point out. First of all, Jewish Chicago, which I publish, is available free throughout the nation, around the world, well, at least on the north side of Chicago. And you know, we concentrated on Chicago this time, so there's the cover of it. You know, if you see it at the newsstands, pick it up. By the way, I apologize for misspelling Ahmed Khan's name. Somebody actually wrote me that they thought I was trying to pawn him off as Jewish when he's a Muslim. He's a Pakistani Muslim. He's actually a very nice guy. And you know what? There's 5 candidates in the race. I had room for 3 pictures. I chose his. So whatever. But anyway, it's available free all over the place. And it says in the article, you know, you have to read the article. You can't just look at the cover. Okay, you know, if you just look at the cover, you might as well wrap fish in it, which is okay after the election too. But you know what? Read the article, because there's 7,450 words that took me 3 days to write, because I try to be very thoughtful. Everything's accurate, documentable, the whole shot. So, you know, check it out. That'd be wonderful. You know what? Let's go to more aldermanic races.
Yeah, a few more aldermanic races. The northwest side is going to see quite a bit of change. The 38th Ward, Tom Allen, who's been the longtime alderman there, was appointed to a judgeship, so he's gone. Tim Cullerton is one of the Cullerton family who has you know, been politically active in that ward for 100 years.
Yeah, I think it's 120 actually, but I could be mistaken. It might not be that ward for 120 years, but it's 120 years the family's been involved, from what I understand.
Right. And he has been appointed to fill out the remainder of Tom Allen's term, and is running in his own right. And
I would have voted for Amy if she ran. She'll understand what I'm saying.
A few other wards on again, you go up the 45th Ward. Pat LeVar, longtime alderman, retired. There's a number of candidates running there.
Yeah, actually, there's two there I'd like to point out because I did get to interview some of the. I can't interview all the candidates. I'd love to, but a lot of you guys didn't even respond. But two guys that I interviewed that I really liked, and like I said, I didn't meet every single candidate. I particularly like Don Blair and John Garrido, who's a lieutenant with the Chicago Police. Don Blair's an economist. I think they both have great backgrounds. I think they're very intelligent people. Personable is important in an alderman. You're going to meet and greet the public. If you're shy and can't deal with people, it's not a good job for you. There's other things you can do in life. Very important. So I like those two. You like anybody in that?
Well, I've worked for Don Blair, so I know Don well, and he's got a master's degree. He's a very well-educated person, and he is a very well-spoken person as well.
Yeah, very well. And plus he is, every time I put anything up on the web, he's always polite and all the rest of it. Oh, and you can always Facebook me, and that's not as dirty as it sounds, believe me. But Facebook's a wonderful way to get in touch with me, AVYMEYERS.
Working our way up then to the real corner of the city there in the 41st Ward. Here's another ward. Brian Doherty's been alderman up there for 20 years, is retiring. And there are a number of candidates, I believe 7 or 8 candidates running up there.
Oh, by the way, I'm sorry to say, just want to apologize to former Officer Jim Mullen for misspelling his name. I've got it Millen. I do make mistakes, people, but it's Mullen. Okay.
Jim Mullen is running up there. There's a number of other. There's another police officer, Richard Gonzalez, running up there.
Richard Gonzalez, I've been on the show. He's actually he was a cap sergeant.
Yes, and Mary O'Connor, the ward Democratic committeeman up there, is running, and Mary also has run a restaurant and catering business up there for a number of years, so she's very well known in the community.
Yeah, I actually called her and tried to get her on the show, but she never responded.
Yeah, well, maybe she was catering a function that day or something. But she's been very active in the community. Has been chair of the Chamber of Commerce up there, organized the turkey trot that they have every Thanksgiving season there. So you know, there's another community that is going to have a new alderman. So when you go up and down the city council, Avi, between retirements and what may be forced retirements, you could have close to half the city council, 15, 20 people who will be new.
See, to me this is very exciting because I so like the idea of that at least for a few years, if this was actually an open government and somewhat transparent, which is one of the reasons I'm not really big about the main candidate. And, you know, basically, the guys that I like, just from my standpoint, but you know what, I haven't 100% made up my mind yet who I'm voting for, are Duvalier and Chico are the two people that I'm looking at. And depending on things like polls and all the rest of it, you know, it's going to be one of those two guys that I personally vote for. And right now, it's like if Duvalier doesn't show numbers, basically, I'm going to vote for Chico. Well,
I think a few more Aldermanics, too, that are worth looking at.
Oh, and before we start with that, because I want to just say this because people may not know this. I said this earlier that Jim is like one of the leading election lawyers, if not the leading election lawyer around here. There was an article in the Reader that talked about him, and I loved the quote. He came up before the judge, and the judge said, you know, Mr. Nally, I don't know if to welcome you or to ask for your autograph. I'm probably getting that wrong, but she actually said the autograph thing, which was cool because she sees him on TV. I would really like to think she's watching this show, and judges do watch it, so it might be, or the regular show, which is Thursday at 7:30, Northtown News Magazine. But he was also on Chicago Tonight. He's become much more popular. The media's discovered what I've discovered. So I think it's cool you're getting all this exposure.
Yeah, well, I don't forget where I came from. You brought me along in this whole media world, so
well,
I'm always very grateful when you ask me to come on the show.
Oh, it's my pleasure, and the fact of the matter is if you didn't carry your own weight, you wouldn't be here, and not only that, but people wouldn't respect you the way they do.
Well, thank you, and you know, I think this is important. Again, I have an opportunity to meet a lot of the people who are running firsthand, so I enjoy the opportunity to come on the show with you and talk about that because I've had a chance to meet these people, talk to them, you know, in more than a cursory way or more than just reading a brochure about what they're saying and make some evaluations. And I'd like to share that then with our viewers because a lot of people will get a brochure and as we know, there's a lot of negative campaigning. And I like the way you do your show, Abby, because you're always very open. You invite all the candidates who would like to appear to come on the program, have, you know, more than just a cursory, you know, soundbite and talk about real issues.
Yeah, and thank you. And we also do everything uncut. If I goof, and I've goofed more than once on the show, you'll find it on YouTube. We're averaging right now for the last couple of weeks over 2,000 hits a week. So thank you so much. That's an awful lot of shows. And we try to be very open and honest. And, you know, you get to see, and I want to point out too that what Jim said is important about being able to see people on the side. because for every minute I talk to candidates on the air, chances are good I talk to them 3 or 4 minutes off the air. So you get to really know people that way and have a good feel for them.
Well, and that's important, and I think a couple of other races I'd just like to touch on. Certainly Chicago, and after this election, of course, due to the census, there's going to be a redistricting. So all the people running in these wards for the 2011 election, this will be the last time they'll be running in the wards as they're constituted. The next time around, these wards will all have been redrawn. There'll be new ward boundaries, and whether somebody's incumbent or a challenger in 2015, there'll be new wards that will have the same ward numbers. Obviously, those will be 50 wards, but they will geographically be different than they are now.
And not only that, but it may include different, depending on who's strong and what. If you've got a strong, for instance, if we've got a strong person in our neighborhood, who's involved in the remapping, our neighborhood stays a Jewish neighborhood. If they wanted to, they could split the thing into 3 different wards, and then all of a sudden there is no more Jewish ward like there is in the 50th ward. And the same is true of Hispanic wards, black wards, Irish wards, the whole shot.
Well, I think one of the things that the census is showing us already and will show us is the growth in the Hispanic population, the Latino population in the city of Chicago. And there are a number of Latino aldermen already, and I think that's going to grow with the redistricting. And a couple of them, at least one I'd like to mention is George Cardenas in the 12th Ward. He's the incumbent alderman. He has served there. He's been very active in the community, runs toy drives, has really done a lot to empower people there. I've had a chance to work with him not only on his own campaign but on campaigns in the past, and he is a very impressive guy in terms of if he tells you something, you can take his word and take it to the bank, and that's an important factor, I think, in any public official, because sometimes I think people like to hear what they want to hear, and one of the difficulties or one of the things a public official sometimes has to do is say, you know what, as much as we'd like to do that, there isn't the money for it or whatever, and we can't. And I think you should respect public officials, even if you disagree with them, who are willing to come out and not sugarcoat things, but say, this is the way it is, and unfortunately the answer is no on that.
And I think that's such an important point, and I so much like a straight shooter. I got to get him on the show now. We'll have to arrange that. Win, lose, but that's one of the reasons, for instance, why I like Bernie Stone in 50, and I like a lot of people in other places. I like straight shooters, people I can deal with straight. I want to mention 2 names, too, south of where I usually cover. Danielle Lawson in 24. Hi, Danielle. Like her very much. There's 17 people she's running against, and I really don't know the other 17, but I like her. And in the 2nd ward, although I do like Enrique Perez, and hi, Poppy, how you doing? I got to say, Bob Fioretti is a guy I really like a lot, and he's definitely offbeat to a different drummer, but he's imaginative, he's got a spine, he's got an imagination, a mind, he's creative, and I think you need a wide smorgasbord of ideas to make things work. In 46, I'll also say hi to Diane Shapiro, although she's not the only candidate. I endorsed her in Jewish Chicago. There's other good people there too, but I do like Diane Shapiro. And I'll say hi to Molly and Michael too. I kind of like them. In any event, more wards.
Well, I wanted to mention Bob Fioretti as well, because Bob is a very old friend of mine.
I like him a lot.
I've known Bob for over 20 years.
I might have supported him for mayor if he ran.
Yeah, well, until Bob, as you know, had a diagnosis of cancer just as he was getting his mayoral campaign together. And because of that, he's running for re-election. I do want to pass on that I had a chance to get together with him the week before last. He's doing very well. He's completed all his medical treatments, and the diagnosis is very, very positive right now. But I'm really impressed with Bob in terms of he's still been out campaigning, attending the community forums, meeting with people, and with battling a very serious illness at the same time. My head is just off to him, because he's really, really shown that he has that dedication to the community, despite the fact that he has his own personal issues to deal with. He hasn't missed a step in terms of serving as alderman and getting out and meeting with people. So I certainly wish Bob all the best, and I agree with you. I think that Bob has his own unique perspective on things sometimes, and
that's good. I think you need all those. That's one of the reasons I like Diane Shapiro in 46. It's not that I don't like Michael or Molly. She brings a different viewpoint that I don't see from anybody else.
Well, and I think that no matter, we talked about the mayor's race, and obviously the mayor is the big office in the city of Chicago, but it is a representative government, and there are going to be 50 aldermen, and I think, again, the interesting thing will be you're going to have a lot of new faces there. So even if there have been aldermen who have been used to doing things kind of going along with the program and everything as it's been over the last several years, I think you're going to bring a lot of new faces in there, and these people are all coming into office with a lot of fresh ideas, which we're going to need.
No, absolutely we're going to need it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And you know what? It may not be, if we get lucky as far as I'm concerned and get a good mayor who's responsive, who wants to work with the city council, the way the rules work is actually the city council could drive the mayor, which I wouldn't mind.
Yeah, it's Chicago's legal form of government is what's called a strong council, weak mayor. Now, over the generations, it hasn't really worked out that way in terms of practice, but the way it's set up is that the city council has a lot of power as a legislative body in terms of introducing ordinances and making law that the executive branch then enforces. And I think you're going to see a lot of people who are coming in new because they're running on platforms of new ideas, who are going to want to see those ideas put out there in the public forum to be discussed vigorously and implemented. So I think there's going to be a lot more activity in the city council with new faces. And
remember that if they hadn't taken a little more than 5 days to discuss the parking meter deal, and you know what, we might have had a different story. And I'm not even so much worried about the price, because it may be worth that now because of the way they jacked up the price. What it was paid for at the time wasn't that arguable. I mean, it seemed at the time, I don't know how the numbers change and all that, but you know what, even if it was a bad deal money-wise, the fact is, or even if it was a great deal money-wise and they got 3 times the amount, the harm it's doing to neighborhood businesses and people who don't want to park, it's driving business out of the city, it's closing down small mom and pop businesses, and I hate to see that. Where there used to be a dire need, for more parking spaces, it's all too easy to park, and people are getting hurt.
Well, no matter who the new elected officials are, the city council, the executive officers, the city is going to have a multi-million-dollar deficit that it's going to have to deal with. And it's not only a result of the economy. I mean, the economy has been bad for the last 3 or 4 years at least. But there's a structural deficit there. So things such as pensions and long-term capital projects have been deferred, and that's come home to roost. And you've got the double whammy now of just a bad economy where the tax revenues are down, people aren't working, they can't pay taxes if you're not working. And it's going to take a lot of creativity and probably a lot of pain to deal with this. So whoever comes in and becomes the new government of the city of Chicago for the next 4 years, in the city council and in the mayor's office and the other offices, they're going to have very, very difficult issues to deal with and hard choices, but they're going to have to be addressed.
No, there's no question about it. And, that's why it'll be good. You'll have a mix of some of the old and some of the new, and you can discuss the ideas. And, I really think, everybody's got to scratch their head and try to do the right thing. One of the things I'd like to say, too, is maybe it's important that they take a look at things for a while. I used to like the way the state legislature used to run. They used to only meet every other year, just for a very short period of time. They only got $8,000 a year. At the time, I think that was overpaid at the time, and probably would even be overpayment now for what they're doing to us. And you know what? You don't need a zillion laws. You need intelligent laws that'll do the job and the right things. There's probably, like in all sorts of areas of life, a zillion laws that ought to come off the books. But you know what? The trick is to find a direction, and a good direction, and go from there. For those of you who tuned in late, this is being re-aired on CAN TV. CAN TV 21, Tuesday at 8 p.m. So Tuesday, 8 p.m., CAN TV 21. Set your DVR right now. You can also catch it later to go on YouTube. Go to www.ntnm.org. Sonny Hirsch, in his spare time, who does just about everything on the show. And because we're in the studio, we're being aided by our usual all-around great guy, Keith McDonald. And we also want to say hi and thanks to Leslie Johnson and Joe Santivani and Amari and everybody over at CAN TV, and hi, Barbara. We really appreciate all the stuff you're doing, and I can't begin to tell you what an important thing it is. If you missed the first segment, that was Rabbi Doug, who co-hosted together with Alderman Bernie Stone, who I am very, very much in favor of. Let's get back and talk to whatever else you'd like to talk about, Jim.
Well, I just think it's going to be one of the things I tell the people who come to me when they're starting to run for alderman. I tell them that is the toughest job in government, without a doubt. And the reason is, alderman is the first person people think of when they have an issue. When a citizen has an issue, that's who they call. And you will talk to any alderman in the city who has been in office, and they will tell you that they're really an ombudsman. You know, it's not just somebody calling about a city issue, my street light is out, or I need a garbage can. People will call the alderman's office saying my tax return from the federal government hasn't arrived, or I have a relative who needs to get into the VA hospital who has served our country. They get basically any issue that relates to government. The first person that people think of is the alderman. So it's a very tough job because there's certain things the aldermen control. As city officials, they have authority over city issues, but they don't have authority over these other things. Yet people will call them, and if you're going to be a good alderman, you're not going to tell someone, well, gee, that's not my job or that's not my issue. You have to find a way to make that work. So the alderman has to also be very adept at developing good relationships with other office holders, so that when calls come in of a federal issue or a state issue, they can't tell the person that's not my job and hang up. They have to be able to say, let me look into it for you and I'll get back to you.
The funniest call I heard of, speaking of local calls, was two people actually called the chamber in my neighborhood, the Westridge Chamber, over to Amy Zander, and wanted Governor Quinn to declare this a state emergency neighborhood because of the snow and bring in the National Guard to shovel the snow out. Actually, you know what? I think that if those calls were referred over to the alderman's office, he had a private crew cleaning, and frankly, that's what's probably going to win him the election. Is our streets are so much better than anybody else's. He basically spent his campaign cash. He bought snow blowers. He rented snow blowers. He got tractors, a whole bunch of them in. People were paving streets, alleys, helping senior citizens. I mean, basically, he took what could have been a disaster and turned it into a major plus, and he's got the respect of people who were on the fence and even people who were supporting other candidates prior.
Well, it's kind of interesting too. We have these snowfalls maybe once every 10 or 15 years, these massive ones, and at least two of them have occurred in city election years. 1979, as some of us are a little older remember, where Mayor Blandick was basically booted out of office because the city did such a poor job of removing a big snowfall that occurred. And 2011, when we had another massive snowfall, but this time I think everybody learned the lesson of 1979 and were prepared for it.
Yeah, no, there's a lot more people who were prepared for it. I have to say that you know what, well, I try to read the complaints and people moaning and all that, because some wards there's more complaints than others, but thank God in my home place, the 50th Ward, I mean, things were, remarkably well done, and I have to give a lot of credit to that. Do we miss a ward you want to talk about?
Well, there's plenty of wards to talk about. You mentioned the 24th Ward, and I just want to...
Sure. Who do you like?
Well, I want to tell you that I have my second former NBA player client running for alderman. In 2003, I represented Bob Love, who ran for alderman. Butterbean. Who's a wonderful man. And again, one of the nice things about working in this area is you get to meet people and see them as just more than a face on a poster. Bob's a great guy, and he ran in 2003 in the 15th Ward, made the runoff, and of course everybody remembers him. And now in the 24th Ward, Mickey Johnson is running.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And Mickey,
power forward, Chicago Bulls.
Absolutely, and Mickey's another homegrown Chicago guy who ended up playing for the Bulls and was a very good player for them for several years in the 80s.
Yeah, he was part of that major push in the playoffs. Bill Walton called the game in Chicago Stadium that I happened to be at in the playoff game against Portland, the most exciting game he ever played, and even though he lost and the Bulls won. Mickey Johnson was unbelievable. Didn't foul, great rebounder, didn't need the ball. He get buckets off the rebound.
Yeah, and Mickey is, as you said, there are 18 people running in that race. So Mickey was fortunate to win the draw, and he's got the top ballot spot, which I think will be a big help to him.
Oh, first ballot spot is definitely a big help. There's no question about it.
With 18 people, definitely.
Yeah. So I want to thank very much my co-host, Jim Nally. I want to thank my first crew, Alderman Stone. Urge you to vote for him. He's, to me, the single most important person in this election. I want to thank Rabbi Doug for being with us. I want to thank Sonny Hirsch. I want to thank Keith McDonald. We're going to be on live again Tuesday at 8 o'clock on CAN TV 21. www.ntnm.org, www.obbyworld.com for Jewish Chicago. This is going to be on YouTube later today. I want to thank Jim Nally, as always, the leading election lawyer in the entire world and probably Chicago as a result. Thank you so much for joining us. I guess we could talk over the credits like Joe Wiseman says, but the fact is, you know what? It's go and vote. Early voting till Thursday, absentee ballot according to Jim until Saturday. Otherwise, vote live on Tuesday the 22nd. And